Hi, Bonnie. Good evening. I hope you can hear me. This is like the third, fourth try. I'm like my previous two were corrupted. Uh, but yes, hi, Bonnie. Good evening. This is what's it called? My final. This is the recording of my final, and this is question one, the writing process. And question one, part A. What was my project one research paper like? It was shit. I won't lie to you. You were pretty lenient with me. Sorry, this is the revised. Um, It was literally just I mean, this is it. You've already read it yourself. You gave me the feedback on it, right? And to explain you how I wrote it, I mean, I had some ideas because I did do some of the work, not all of it, and that falls on me. That I pretty much threw myself in the hot seat on that. It was a quick scramble of ideas that were not fully developed, and that's something that came from not having done research correctly. I.e., the car sheets weren't what's it called created, nor were my sources examined that in depth. My research question was still too broad by the time I started writing it. I kind of narrowed it down like by the middle of it, but at the same time, I still didn't know what direction I wanted to take with it. And I restructured it completely after draft three and wrote it in about 5 hours before it was due, like taking the deadline on the Friday it was due, right? And it was just like a caffeine crazed high that I used to get it done. Um, and I know that it needs some organization. I knew that I just wanted to get my foot in the door pretty much, and I honestly, you don't deserve that. I apologize for that. You deserve my my best work, and I didn't give you that. Uh, I didn't fit the missing perspective. It wasn't concise. It was shit. Yes, it was shit. So going on to part B of it, what was it after his revisions? A polished shit. I mean, I know I still could have done better. I just added some more, what's it called? Statements from the interviews, right? Connections here where that I personally experienced. I mean, for example, discrimination. When I was what's it called? That it doesn't knowing English doesn't necessarily protect you from discrimination. This is something that I can tell you because I went up north. What's it called? To work in the refineries, to work in a refinery in Wyoming during the summer, and honestly, uh, discrimination's everywhere. I mean, even here in the valley, you get discriminated from. Um, Another thing that I saw that just like really I felt tied into my essay, right, is that even though educated and non-educated immigrants here in the well, here in the U.S., right, Hispanic non-educated and educated immigrants are working blue collar jobs. The difference between the jobs that they're actually working is quite staggering. For example, people who held previous education, right, like your um, engineers or your lawyers, your doctors. Well, obviously they pursued careers or trades that um, kind of fit in with what they used to do. For example, what's it called? I would see that people who studied as lawyers here in the U.S. were what's it called? They would go into being clerical workers or receptionists, data entry. Um, what's it called? Doctors would pursue people who were previously doctors in Mexico and they immigrated here would pursue nurses, dental assistants, something that was along the lines of their related, what's it called, their related career or degree back in Mexico. Most of the engineers here that, like most of the electricians, pipe fitters, and welders that I knew, and also the like engineering technicians were, what's it called, actually Hispanic, and they were people who held degrees in Mexico previously prior to immigrating here, and their degrees were either electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, industrial engineers, um, chemists, accountants, people who were pretty much good with math, and that you can see that in the trades that they actually chose because electricians and pipe fitters use a lot of math. Um, but people who didn't have a college education prior to immigrating, right? They were scaffolding, installations. They were working in scaffolding. They were working insulation. They were general labor. Um, Trades that really didn't require that much specialized knowledge or a certain degree of advanced math that you would normally get in college. Um, this is my essay after revisions, right? Um, what's it called? To answer question one, part C, what I've learned about the writing process. I learned that rough drafts really help with the essay structure. Um, Read your sources many times to fully understand them. Feedback sessions really do make writing and ideas more concise, because it gives you what's it called. You get direct input from people who already read your essay, and they can tell you, hey, you know what, you make sense here, you don't make sense here, so work on this. How about you can add, and then like you can add this over here to what's it called. You just get direct input from your, like, not necessarily your audience, right, but your peers, and that really does help a lot. I'm really used to working alone. I really, before, my essay structure would just be like, hey, you know what, like, let me just write a quick narrative essay and I'm done. I really wouldn't focus on if my audience could understand it or not. But with feedback sessions, it really, like, you have to take into account, hey, you know what, your audience understood it, your audience didn't understand it, sorry. It's just like, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to take their advice? Are you not going to take their feedback, their input? And what I've learned is pretty much, everything helps. Literally everything helps, from rough drafts to what's it called, how to cite different sources. Pretty much anything can be used as a source, from an interview to a podcast to a book, a journal. Hell, you can even use this in the future, right? If someone makes a, if someone makes an essay regarding English 1302 projects, I mean, they can use this and quote me on this. Analyzing our research really does help, and that's something that I had to figure out pretty quick in this class. For part D of question 1, it's like identify examples that support what I've claimed to learn, right? Well, one of them would, like, the main one would be feedback sessions. That I can attest that really did help me. If it wasn't for the feedback sessions, I don't think I would have, what's it called, like, actually kept going forward with the project. They really did help me. It really was satisfying, to me at least, right, that people understood and agreed to a certain extent with what I was writing, that they could relate to what I was saying. And that really did, what's it called, give me kind of confidence in my essay that I was pretty much lacking it, to continue and, like, just keep marching forward with my ideas. Another thing is, like, the round talk discussion, right? It really helps, and I can see myself using this in the future. But that's for part F, right? But I can really see myself using this one in the future. Sorry, that's for part F. Like, this example just, like, really demonstrates what I've learned in terms of just having, like, somewhere to compare and contrast your sources and seeing how they actually how they clash or combine or mesh with your ideas. It's just something I hadn't thought about, and now it's like I had never done this in an English class. It was just, hey, write a narrative essay, like, for example, for the ACT or the SAT, your STAR reading exams, your DBQs, like your document-based questions. It's just like, oh yeah, look at this and tell me what you think about it. And I would just write it. I really wouldn't care about, like, how just pick, like, random. I would just, like, pick random quotes or random ideas that I saw that I fit in with what I wanted to put, and just cite those. Not really focus on how the reader was gonna be like, hey, you know what, like, this actually makes sense, or the author here has a point, or he's just full of shit. I really didn't care about that now, but now I do. It's now like, oh, you know what, the feedback sessions and the round table talk is just like, hey, you know, this is like a slap in the face, like, in terms of a wake-up call, like, hey, you know what, your words carry weight, and people actually can either agree or disagree with them, and it's just a dopamine rush when they actually do agree with them. For example, here he's like, Jose said, hey, I like how you mentioned that more educated immigrants would not speak English at all if they can't speak it fluently, and that's, like, one of the main quotes that from my essay that I used. Another was that it was quite well formatted, in her opinion. I really did appreciate that from Mariangela. It gave me confidence to continue going with it. The only thing is, like, it should include more data and less about myself. I will concede that. The examples, what's it called? Well, the car sheets, even though I didn't do them, that's something I had never seen before, and in the future, I am going to use them because it would have been so much helpful. So much more helpful to like have a reference, because they're pretty much reference sheets to go and look back at them and just like, hey, you know what? This is actually a good source. Let me use this one like in terms of actually scrambling last minute looking for sources that make sense or that tie in with what I want to talk about, or that even contrast with what I want to talk about. For example, in the roundtable talk, I figured that I wasn't expecting you to tell us when you came up with roundtable talk, right? To say, hey, you know what? Find me one thing or three things that go against what you're trying to say. I had always thought, well, you know, just make sure it agrees, like make sure that it's in mesh with what you're trying to say. Pretty much like give them the propaganda, the party line. That's how I would write my essays. Pretty much like, hey, here's my ideas. Yours are wrong. This is why. And no, it's not supposed to be like that. Now, it actually fortifies. I feel that it fortifies my claims even more if I have something that actually goes against my essay or my main idea, because it gives my audience or the people in my audience who might be against what I'm trying to say, it gives them it acknowledges their ideas, and by acknowledging their ideas, they may feel more comfortable listening to mine. So that's just something I've learned, and something of how I can apply this into a real life situation. I can see myself applying everything I learned in this class on my senior engineering design project. I mean, that's the project where I have to, what's it called? It's a year-long project where I have to identify a problem and create a solution using everything I've learned as an engineering student. But I also have to research and confirm that my project isn't borrowing or plagiarizing someone else's work or previous projects, or infringing on a patent. I can see myself using the research skills here to actually like just research the shit out of let's say I come up, this is a hypothetical scenario because I can't, I don't know exactly what I want for my research project by the time I'm a senior. That's in about 2-3 years. But I know that I'm going to really be invested in that research because that's either make or break for me. And if I plagiarize on that costs me my degree, and I can't get a license either as a professional engineer. So that's just something that's really important to me. I can see myself using the feedback sessions to showcase my project at different stages of development, and have like my peers or people in my groups, right? Like, hey, you know what, this is a good idea. Maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe we should switch this up. Maybe change this, or use this in a different application instead of focusing on just one thing and focusing on my mind, right? Like what I have in my, like the vision I have in my mind. It's like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's good, but it could be better. And the way it could be better is by actually listening to other people. That's just something I can apply here in your class. And that concludes question 1.